And some of you guys might have recognized a little bit of that riff right there. And I wanted to get you guys a gift since I didn't get to talk to you on Valentine's. And that's that gift right there. And that's from Tiny Sandhu. And that's that magic man, that Pied Piper in the distance. You know, he's that he's that wild soldier who's just firing arrows at us, beautiful arrows from far away. And that's Tiny Sandhu. And he sent that to me on my inbox for Valentine's. And he said, give this to the people. And actually, I'll read the email right here. He said, hey, yo, sorry about the tardiness. Hope this shit get there in time. Just crank this out. And I decided to show some respect. Mr. John Mayer, 2, with a cover of his song, Another Kind of Green. And so that it is right there from Tiny Sandhu, from me to you right there. Let's hear one more time a little bit of that riff. And that sound, if you notice, it sounds a little bit like a pigeon trying to learn to swim a little bit if you listen to that. You know what I'm saying? Take that vibe in as you're hearing it. You know, it's got that a little bit of that tinge of it's like somebody trying to jerk you off while you're trying to kind of hold your breath underwater. If that means anything to anyone, take that in while you hear it. You know, you're trying to hold your breath and somebody trying to jerk you off a little. And now then he catapults. Listen to Tiny, he gonna take us up that staircase right here. Come on, Tiny. You can do it, Tiny. Get big. That's that Tiny Sandhu right there. Happy belated Valentine's and happy February 19th. And that last riff there by Tiny, man, he just, you know, when he really blows up there at the end and he just lets it all hang out, it sounds like somebody just putting kind of just lukewarm caramel onto a baby's back. If you'll hear this one more time, take that in while you get this. There he comes in with that knife. He got that jar. And that's that creamy right there. And Tiny putting that creamy on that baby's back. Cream that baby up, boy. Put a little bit of chunky on his soft neck. He's spreading that sweet peanut butter, spreading that sweet caramel onto a baby right there. And that's that beautiful hitter right there from Tiny Sandhu. Good to be back with you guys. Sorry I didn't get a Thursday episode up, but you know what? That's how life does it. I had a crazy week. We're doing we got a pilot for Comedy Central, you know, and I'm grateful. It's a digital series. You know, they're putting us on the digital network. You know, we're going to put it out there. And it's based on the podcast, you know, so it's, you know, it's young dudes, and young women, you know, and even people that's, you know, in the middle, people that's running that dual sex citizenship, people that's running both operating systems at the same time, you know, transgender. Everybody's welcome on the show, and it's, but yeah, it's like helping people get tight. Because we all running a little bit loose. I'm coming to you from La Jolla. I'm down here in La Jolla, California. I just went for a run. I'm here at the La Jolla Comedy Store. I want to thank everybody that's come out. We've sold all the shows out so far. Just been 2 shows on Friday. We got 2 tomorrow. Down here with little Ehsan, and he is Middle Eastern. And we also have another gentleman named Jeremy Scipio, who is a young black gentleman. Both friends of mine. And Jeremy kind of has that syndrome where it's like a white man kind of stuck into a black man's body. And if you ever met a real, you know, it's like if they had like Death of a Salesman, like Jeremy would play Willie Loman. You know, he's got that, you know, he's that briefcase brother. He's like that. But both very funny men. We've been having a good time. The show's already sold out for the rest of the weekend, hopefully. So I'm coming to you guys, and it's beautiful, man. The sun is hitting this bedroom right now. I just went for a run. Man, La Jolla, you go for a run out here. Everybody's beautiful. They got tits and ass, and, I saw a girl had a chin implant that was at least a fucking, a small B cup. I'm like, damn, that she got them chits, them chin tits, and she had them. And so there's just beauty running up and down. My goodness. You just see all of it, and people putting, slickener in their hair and gelling their bodies up and getting outside and letting people kind of see their skin. And you can see pets. Even the pets are fucking beautiful. Even the pets are damn. I saw I think it was a Bichon or something, or an Australian Terrier, and that thing had some hips on it, to be honest. And I don't look at animals like that. I never have. But that thing had some hips on it. But good to be back, man. Good to be with you guys. I want to update you on a few things. We got the Hamster Rancher video. It's just been this past week, I didn't get time to rest. I booked too many comedy sets, and I was shooting the pilot all day, each day. And then I had to take a train down here to La Jolla. And, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be busy, but that lifestyle is fast. It's fast. And at the same time, I'm trying to keep my head above water. And I just last weekend, I forgot my medication at home. I don't know if anybody's ever been without their medication. But, man, you'll get bent out. The first day, if I don't take an antidepressant, the first day I'm okay. I don't notice it. But that second day, boy, they could have a bunch of birds outside, and all I'll hear like a, I'll hear like an angry crow. They'll have a bunch of sparrows chirping and doing the Lord's verbal diligence. But I'll hear like an angry crow, like half a mile away. And that's what sometimes being off the antidepressants does for me. Makes me all bent out. Makes me, just real on edge. Like I'm living on, my brain is living on an inline roller skate. Those inline roller skates where the wheels are in a row? It's like my brain is riding on one of those, and it's ready to it's just wobbling. It's wobbling. But so it took me a couple days, man. I had to regroup, and I just hit that run out here. I got that 4-mile hitter in. Because one of my goals this year is to get that body pump. And some people, they like that old-fashioned body pump. You outside and, putting butter on the legs and pushing, going to prison just to, be able to work out. That old school kind of shit. But I like that. You go to the gym, you get that maybe 70-minute workout in, and you get that full body pump. I like my whole body to feel pumped up. Some people want that one muscle group. I want that whole body pump. I want to feel like my skin kind of lifted off the bone a little bit. I want to feel kind of light in the legs. I want to feel like, I want to feel my balls kind of bubbling up by the top of my sack. I want to feel that body pump. I want to feel that warmth. I want to feel it inside of me. So, yeah, I'm down here in La Jolla, and it's been good, and thank you guys for your support. Had a good time in Portland last week. Some people wrote in, like, Theo, what happened in Portland? What was going on? And I didn't comment much on it, And then, I thought more about it, and I'm like, well, some things, I should comment on, and some things I shouldn't comment on. And, I had a good experience at Harvey's. We had a lot of great people come out. A lot of people came out. I honestly, and I want to put some photos up. I probably had 10 people that came out. It was their first time ever at a comedy show. And that's pretty amazing, just to have that opportunity to be somebody's inaugural experience. But we just had an issue one night on the stage. It was I think it was the third show on Saturday or something. the MC was just going through a tough time. And he and I got into some differences backstage. And he just, he just said some offensive stuff. And then he brought me on the stage. And so it was just awkward. And look, I'll take responsibility. Like I probably, could have been kinder to him off stage maybe. Or I could have recognized maybe if he was going through a tough time. I don't think I was as keen as I could have been. But yeah, so then it was just awkward. So this dude's like, F-bomb this, F this guy, fuck Theo, blah, blah, blah. Then I got to come out and perform. So it was the strangest thing I've ever been through. I've never had an issue at any comedy club I've ever been to in my life, ever. I'm trying to think of one issue that I've had. Maybe, people in the audience being wild. One lady bought a snake one time down near El Paso. One lady bought a rattler and let that bitch loose because it was her birthday or something, or her brother's quinceañera or something, and they setting it off and they let a rattler loose at that club. But outside of that, I've never been involved in anything at a comedy club. One time, actually a long time ago, me and a gentleman did get into an argument. He was in the audience, and I got into the crowd and had to choke him down a little. Give him that light choke, bruh. Give him that fucking hard scarf, And the problem was, while we're sitting there wrestling on the ground, I had the microphone with me the whole time. So we're arguing, fighting, rolling around, and the whole audience can hear every little part of it, Even to the point where, when you when a fight stalls out and the two dudes are just like, let me go. You let me go, I'll let you go. Let go of my hair. You let go of my hair. Let go of my, all right, 1, 2, 3, boom, right? And then everybody lets go. The audience was listening to all of that up close because I had the microphone right there with me. So, man, by the time we stood up from that, the audience was howling because it was like they were behind the scenes on a fight, They were behind the scenes on a fight. So, but yeah, that was the thing. The guy's like, fuck you, Theo's a fucking asshole. And he brought me up. And it was just, and I didn't say anything on stage. And I just didn't want the crowd to feel uncomfortable because it was really uncomfortable, And I know the guy's probably going through, the dude had, he hadn't been having a good weekend at all. And he was, he was opening up the show, and I'd asked him not to use profanity at the front of the show because, I drop some. And one of the rules in comedy is if you're too blue up front, then it doesn't leave room for the dude at the end to be blue, Like if the first guy drops a bunch of F-bombs, then, the crowd might not be ready for all that. And so it just can make it tricky out of the gate. So anyhow, that was the situation. Am I blaming the dude? No, I'm not. But here's the crazy part. The club left him in the building. So here's a dude that was like threatening me and then brings me up on stage. And then the club just is serving him booze the whole time and left him in the building. So then he brings me off stage at the end. So when I get off stage, he's coming back up. And I'm thinking, does this dude want to wrestle? Does this dude have a dagger? Is he going to try to, do we have a syringe of bleach and he's going to try to get me in the neck? Is he going to try to give me that ultimate white neck? So it was just poorly run. I will say that. And the people that booked me and everything were cool, but it was poorly run. And so I want to apologize to my fans that came out and were in an environment that they felt was poorly run. Because, I take responsibility for what my fans come out to see, A lot of my fans are my friends. So I take responsibility for what they come out to see. And if they come out to a show and the MC, the dude who's, is yelling, fuck this dude, I'll fuck him up, all of this shit. And the club's letting them stay in the building because they're not paying attention to their own stage because they just worried about whatever else. Then you know what? It's not a fair way to treat somebody. And it's not a fair way to treat audience members. And I feel like at that point, I'm like, and I'm not whining about it. It's like, the dude was going through a tough time. I get it, man. We all go through tough stuff, and I'm not even generally mad at the guy. I'm really not, I've been there, I've had a lot of anger. I'll admit I had some part in it. I probably could have handled myself a little bit better with the guy. Recognize he was going through things. But the club that leaves a dude in there, that wasn't cool. It wasn't cool. So outside of that, I think most of the people that came out, we had a great experience. And that was that. But everybody's been asking, and so, I wanted to comment on it. I'm not saying don't go back to the club. I'm not saying that they're not a good place. But I'll say that it was the most awkward experience I've ever had at a club over the weekend. I will say that, Anyhow, what else, man? Let's get into what else. I got that body pumping. And I'm down here in La Jolla. One of the things that happened to me sometimes, this used to happen a lot when I was on the road. You'll get a couple of Muppets that'll reach out trying to catch that meat, You get some ladies you haven't talked to in a while and they hollering at daddy. They see daddy's name on a sign, they dropping, a text, Remember this? I met you, 6 years ago behind the Mexican grill. Remember this? You met, you used to know my girl Janet. We met up by we all went over to the park and we're on a swing set drinking liquor. You remember this? It's like, you got to fend some of that off. I notice as I get in this zone, I got to get a little more focused on my shows, man. Now when I was a little bit younger, I'd be out there, and a lot of these ladies whistling at this meat. And a lot of ladies trying to catch this hit of ham in their jaw. But now I'm trying to stay focused. I got my eye on the prize. And I just put an orange slice in my mouth. And I'm sorry, I know people don't like to hear people eat, but I just put a beautiful little orange slice in my mouth. And god damn, that thing was beautiful. I mean, I love oranges. Now, some of y'all know, my brother used to eat a lot of oranges when we were children. And I strongly remember watching him eat oranges. And I just remember thinking, man, that boy, he's got it made, Because I was in the environment where, like, one of your siblings would go off and get something and then bring it back just for them. Nobody was bringing back 2 oranges. So you'd be like, damn, this motherfucker got an orange, huh? It'd be Christmas and you're like, damn, look at this bitch with that Christmas orange. And you'd watch him eat that thing. And you'd watch him, rip into the shell of that thing, that orange shell, and just see some of that skeet just fly out that orange, And that's just the Lord's backwash flying out of that thing. I'm just saying, oh man, you try to catch it in your mouth in the air because you knew that was all you were going to get. And you sit there and watch your sibling eat something thinking maybe they give you that last piece. You remember that? Be like, damn, he down to 2 slices left on this orange. Oh, I know one of these gotta be for me. And fucking nothing, bro. Nothing, man. Those are the old days, man. Those were the old days. But yeah, what else, man? I'm down here in La Jolla. It's beautiful. If you haven't been to La Jolla and you want to go to a good place, a lot of people come out to Los Angeles and stuff to, do holidays. Get that La Jolla in. This thing's fire, man. This thing is fire. And, I didn't chime in over Valentine's, and I just want to express my love, man. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for all your love and support. We had a call come in about Valentine's. We're going to get into that. We're also going to get into, we had a call come in from, somebody considering adult sexual prostitution, maybe light prostitution, service work. We're going to get into that. We're going to discuss what state would win if all the states went to war, which could happen. Which state's going to win it all? That's what I want to know. And I got some ideas, and I know you guys do too. Some of you guys hit the hotline. And as always, if you have any thoughts or comments from this week's episode, you can hit the hotline 985-664-9503 and comment on whatever we have going on. I want to let you guys know that's it. Let's go, man. Let's get into it. This was a call that we had come in about Valentine's. Here we go.
Theo, it's your boy Scotty J down in West Palm.
Scotty J down in West Palm. And I have spent time down in West Palm, and last time I was there, I won about $800 at the casino there, at the Hard Rock Casino. And also, one of the first girls I ever met off of Tinder, I met down there in West Palm. And she ended up getting married years later. Onward.
I wanted to give you my story about how I almost died on Valentine's Day back in
Love hurts, brother. You almost died on Valentine's Day? Love hurts, man. That's a fact, Scotty. That's a fact. Onward.
died on Valentine's Day back in 3rd grade. So I was getting a piggyback ride for one of my homies in school, this bigger black kid named Jason.
Whoa. And right there, I'm going to stop you, man. I mean, piggyback ride, probably the least safest form of travel after Greyhound bus. You got Greyhound bus, and then I think you go to piggyback ride. You know, it's like, you know, you got Greyhound bus and you go to piggyback ride, man. So this is already out the gate. It's dangerous. You riding on a brother. Onward.
I said let go. He didn't hear me. I let my hands go. He didn't let my legs go, and I smacked the ever-living shit out of my head. The only thing I remember much of that day is waking up in the nurse's office and then them telling me to ride my bike home.
Okay, already got a couple issues in his Valentine's story. First of all, he heard you. He heard you say don't. He heard you say let go. He didn't want to let go, man. Because the funnest thing to do when you're young is to have your boy struggle. And if he can, you know, suddenly he giving you that reverse wheelbarrow, you know, he giving you that dirty dancer, you know, where he's just holding you, you know, he got your legs up behind his rear waist and he's dragging your hair along the ground. You know, he's giving you that free salon visit. He's just dragging your hair through the dirt. And next thing you know, your head hit the ground and you end up in a nursing office. Onward.
My brother told me I hit every garbage can on our street. And when I got home, I couldn't really speak much English. It sounded like a little bit of gibberish. And I couldn't open my hand to take the Advil from my mom. So she rushed me to the hospital. And when I got there, I threw up everywhere immediately walking in. And they took me right back and took care of me. So I guess the moral of the story would be, if you got to go to the emergency room, throw up as soon as you walk in. They got no choice but to take you.
It's not a bad thought. Puke as you enter. I mean, that could work for a lot of places. You know, your stepmother's house, your aunt-in-law, any of those places, man. Puke as you enter. So, yeah, man. I mean, honestly, it don't sound like that fucking bad, dude. You know, people get murdered on Valentine's. People come home and find their spouse getting, you know, holed out by a big brother, you know? So, I don't know if this is that bad of a circumstance. You know, you hurt your head in 3rd grade, brother. I mean, I appreciate the call. You know, it's risky. Piggyback, one of the riskiest forms of travel, dude, and we all know that, man. And it's a gateway also to homosexuality. And I'm not saying homosexuality is bad or anything, but I'm just saying it could happen. It could happen. And that's it, man. That's what's up there. You know, dude, I'm running out on this beach. I can't even tell you how nice it is down here in Florida right now. Or La Jolla. I'm looking out and I just see, you know, I see the trees and I see the beach and it literally looks like Florida. It looks like Florida, man. You know, and you know, I don't want to get into it, but my heart and thoughts and you know, and my love goes out to all the people dealing with the tragedy there in Florida, and I know that's a tough time, and it's tough to see that. You know, and I don't know how you find the solution. You know, it makes me want, like, I've never been a parent, but I just wonder how hard is it to know if your kids have guns? You know, if your kids are not doing well. You know, maybe it's just really hard to know. You know, because look, you can argue the gun thing all day. It would be great I'd love it if they didn't make any more guns. You know? I'd love it if they made if they made a law a lot of times that we got enough guns, you know? I'd like it if we went back to bow and arrows and see who's a real boss. You know, I'd like that action sometimes. But even more so beyond that, it's just, how do we know if somebody's okay or not? How do we know if a dude's all right? Because everybody says, oh, we had that kid in our club. We had that guy in our, you know. And I don't think the video games help either when you got these shoot 'em up type games. But I don't know if that influences people. I don't know. Oh man, but it's just such a tragedy of just children going to school and then, and then they're going to heaven. And it's just disheartening. And then the media blows it all out. Now everything is it's a commentary on society, and it's a commentary on, immediately it's a commentary on politics. And I wish somebody would shoot up one of these news networks. There you go. That'd be somebody with some real balls. But I feel horrible, because imagine, a lot of these parents, they probably feel, as much as they don't want to, they probably feel some sadness also for the shooter, for the kid, because obviously something was wrong with him. Obviously he was hurting, and I'm sure as a parent you just don't want to see any child hurt. All right, man. I didn't mean to bring us into that hole right there, but it's a real thing. They didn't have that when I was young, I don't think. I mean, they had kids do guns. They had one of my friends was playing Russian roulette. His brother was playing Russian roulette and accidentally killed himself. Another young man was had a gun out at a party and accidentally killed himself. I mean, definitely when there's a gun in the room, I don't get I'm not the guy that gets comfortable. I'm the guy that usually leaves the room. If there's booze and guns in the room and you're not like in a hunting environment, I'm out. Because it's usually a knucklehead that brings a gun into that type of environment. But talking about that and talking about what's going on in these and making people mentally healthy. And then I wonder what factor of it is like, do humans even mean as much to other humans as they used to? Is there something there where we're starting to just lose the human connection? Where you just look at other humans and you don't get that feeling that we're the same thing anymore or something. I'm talking about something in the air, in the zeitgeist that we're not, that connectivity isn't there, that used to be there. I mean, you used to need humans. There was a time when you needed humans for everything. And now you can kind of not need humans if you want. You can go a whole day and really not need any humans. You can just need machines. They even have something called life support. It's a machine. You could just be on that. Back in the day, if you wanted, some support, you had to go to an actual person, have them just, cheer you on, hold your hand, tell you they love you. Now they got a life support machine. So it's just maybe, times are changing. I don't know. Man. It's just a lot. It's a lot if you let it be a lot, I guess. But I guess, what I try to do instead right now, I'm just trying to embrace what's going on. Embrace, the things that are exciting. I got to ride down on that train yesterday. They had and I'm not going to say that this gentleman was a gay man, but he seemed predominantly gay. Kind of an older black gentleman dressed up. And he asked if he could sit on my lap. And look, I don't want a senior to not have a place to sit down. And I said, he goes, I know this is going to sound, crazy or surprising, but the train is so full. I was wondering if I could just kind of just sit right here by you. But by me, he kind of lowered his buttocks and his, upper leg onto my leg. I'm like, that's not by me. I'm thinking that's on me. And so I was like, well, I'll get up. You can sit down. He's like, no, I don't want you to not to have a seat. We could probably make this work. And it was just awkward, man. And then he when it was obvious that it was uncomfortable for me, he meandered down the train and found another man who was more willing to get into all of that. And but it was a nice ride. It was a good ride. So let's talk about this, man. Let's talk about if America was, because people are getting separated. You got to keep them separated. That's starting to happen. Because places are so different. Places live by different ideals and what means something to them. Things are getting separated. And I don't blame it. I don't think that the congruency that a lot of, there's this whole agenda kind of thing that pushes this, we're all equals, we're all the same, but it's not the reality. It's not the reality. And I think there's people that just want that. I think there's some people that believe in that, and they believe that in that because their perspective of the world is that we are all the same, and everything in their little world, it makes sense. And then I think there's other people, it's like, that's not what's going on. It's a great idea, but that's not what's going on. And I think people are, kind of getting back to or finding things that make them, will start to take pride in things that are more local. There's been more local news has been watched in the past year. Did you know that? And that hasn't been the case for probably 10 years. I'm sure it's been on the decline, maybe 20. People are just trying to get back to their roots a little bit, find things that are real to them, find things that they know are accurate in their life, and latch onto those a little bit more. And so that's why I think you could see the states. I think you could see an all-out state versus state war. And who would win? Where would that start? What would that even look like? What would that even look like? Would your state have a chance? What would that look like? We had a couple calls that came in, and I'm gonna pepper those in with my own thoughts and ideas. Let's start off with one of those. Here we go.
Hey, Theo. It's Chris calling from Waldo, Maine.
Waldo, Maine, and I'm sure everybody pull a Where's Waldo on it, and I dressed up like Where's Waldo one time for Halloween, more than one time, before everybody else did. Everybody got onto that shit for a while. I did that shit when I was in 8th grade. And my boy Tickly Todd drank some gasoline at the gas station. Because we were also on mushrooms and he had to go home early. Onward. Thanks for calling, Chris.
I'm just calling about your topic of the states going against each other in like a war scenario. And basically, my idea is Maine, my home state, would be most likely to be successful in this situation because of all the wholehearted people here,
Okay, you saying Maine's going to be successful because of the wholehearted people? This isn't a bake-off, Chris. Okay, this isn't recipes aren't coming into play. This is a war, brother. This isn't who got the most pecans in their, in their basket. Wholeheartedness ain't going to help. This isn't who owns the most episodes of Little House on the Prairie on cassette. Let's hear more.
We have dairy farmers. We have lobstermen. We have everybody out here. So,
bro, y'all got milk and shellfish. Two of the most things that people are most allergic to. Dairy and shellfish. Y'all going to have gout and diarrhea, bruh, by the end of the first battle. Let's hear more.
I once knew a lobsterman. He was fishing out there, and he was baiting the trap because there's bait bags that go in the lobster traps. And he broke his finger on that fishing boat. He drank himself a gallon, I think it was, or a half gallon of coffee brandy, and he was good to go. It's their medicine out here, so you give our war force a little bit of coffee brandy, some half and half milk from our strong dairy farmers, and I think, honestly, we would succeed.
Succeed at what? Succeed at seasickness? You just named one man who broke his finger trying to fish. So I got to say, out of the gate, Maine would be out. I've been up to Maine. It's a lot of people growing their own weed, arguing with the cops, and the cops are also at home growing their own weed. Okay, I spent some time off Islesboro Island out there, John Travolta country. Went and we had dinner with Kirstie Alley one time when I was a child. A friend of mine knew her. And I tried to finger bang a chick in an attic out there who I was in love with, and also hit a bat with like a vampire, not a vampire bat, but like a regular American bat with a tennis racket. So I've been through some shit out there. Maine is just a bunch of unfinished houses, a lot of rainwater. I mean, it's good people. You got the Black Bears. That's y'all's state mascot for the state, for the college, University of Maine, I think. But I'm going to say this. I don't think you guys get out of that bracket. Out of that northeastern bracket, no way. You guys would probably, y'all would escape to Canada out of the gate. I'm going to say that for Maine. New Hampshire's right there with you guys. I think I mean, New Hampshire, I think most of y'all's force would probably be, I'm guessing, wholehearted lesbians. You know, you want to talk about wholehearted, I'm talking about that vitamin D, 100% milk fat lesbians. That would be a lot of that workforce, that war force out of New Hampshire. And I think that hemp right there I mean, here's the thing that Maine does have, though. Maine has a lot of people that are used to living in the woods. So you'd have that kind of militia style. But y'all are a lot of vegans, dude. A lot of people up there eating raspberries and, you know, cultivated scabs, just bad granola. I don't think y'all going to have the energy to withstand. Y'all know about a lot of roots and stuff like that, so you could live in the woods for a while. So I'd say this, Maine would beat New Hampshire. I think you guys would probably struggle against Vermont. In Vermont and New Hampshire, let's be honest, they're really just the same thing to people. Okay, I know that, New Hampshire, I think, is John Irving country. He wrote a lot of those books, Cider House Rules. You got a lot of wrestlers and a lot of rich kids up there going to private schools and stuff like that. But the truth is, that's a great white north. A lot of people hopped up on syrup, sucking on trees, smoking dope. You got the basketball team up there, the Catamounts. I don't think that's going to help. They're super pale, way pale. People look like they're allergic to the sun. I don't think anybody makes it out of that bracket. Now, I think then you get over to Massachusetts. And I think Connecticut would get their ass kicked by Rhode Island. I'm going to go with that if we're starting in this northeast bracket. Connecticut doesn't have a shot. Connecticut's a lot of, rich people. A lot of people from New York and stuff hiding their money out in Connecticut. They got these really fancy homes. They got these rolling hills outside of Hartford. You got the British out there. It's basically British. It's a lot of people trying to pretend that they're not British, and they do look British. They got these little rock walls outside of their houses. It's fancy. It's richy rich. A lot of covered bridges out there. So I'll say this. Connecticut could stand back in these homes and protect themselves with some long-range weaponry. But let me say this, man. You get some boys out of Hartford. You give them a little bit of gas money. They take over that countryside, I think. And then they're going to, but Providence, I think, will whoop everybody's ass. Providence is wild. Providence is wild. I mean, I saw a dude one time in Providence. He was shaving, right? And he was thirsty. He cut his tongue with his razor and just took a sip of blood for his own thirst. And that's Providence. I saw a dude one time eat a paper bag, man, with mustard on the outside of it. Spicy mustard. And that's lunch. That ain't lunch to me, but that was lunch to him. And that's Providence out there. People eating paperworks. So I think you probably have, you have Rhode Island sneak in, but there's just, they might take Connecticut, but Massachusetts is going to take all of that. Massachusetts has them wild alcoholic boys out there in Amherst. A lot of alcoholism. You got Boston, these Patriot fans, and then what's going to happen? You can have New York. And New York City, man, it's not the same as it used to be. Let's be honest. You want to talk about a place that's low-key, secretly as gentrified as possible? We're talking about Manhattan. It's a lot of mookity-mooks over there, a lot of high rent. Alphabet City down there on the Lower East Side is the only place you can even get a fucking good gram of dope or anything, or heroin, or even, you can catch some good hookers or something here and there if you want it. But outside of that, New York City's, man, overall, it's not what it used to be. Now, you get out into the burbs, you got some stuff happening. Williamsburg, Brooklyn, those people probably aren't going to fight. This ain't like the Newsies back in the day when Christian Bale and the boys would argue over, the price of newspapers and what was being printed. These dudes nowadays, a lot of soft cats out there. So you can have a lot of dudes saying, Williamsburg, like you'll read in Williamsburg, the graffiti in the bathroom, you'll read Derek sucks dick. But only if he's okay with it. You read shit like that. You're like, what? Who cares? It's just supposed to say Derek sucks dick. It's not real. Nobody even knows who Derek is. It's not a real thing. It's graffiti. But they'll be trying to make too much peace. They'll be trying to make too much peace in a war. They won't realize it's called a war. And they'll be trying to do all this peace stuff and wear all these fancy sneakers. And I think New York is taken out. I think New York is taken out. New York City, I think they get taken out, though, by the real hitters. Rochester, Buffalo, Albany. They had a guy on a Greyhound bus out there outside of Albany, cut another man's head off at a rest area. Do you know the savageness have to be in someone to take another man's head off with probably a not even decent blade? I can barely go pee at a rest area, and this man is doing upper body work. Okay. So I think New York is going to be going in strong, but it's going to be a lot of them real boys out of Buffalo, Rochester, out of Binghamton. It's going to be a lot of real boys coming up there out of Syracuse. Not the people that go to the college, but the people that live in the town. You know what I'm talking about. People with neck tattoos, a lot of blue breaths, a lot of real cats out there. A lot of people that got, a lot of people that have tattoos of other family members on their body. Gang. So that's at Northeast. I think you got New York, but I think a lot of it. And then you got New York and Massachusetts. And I think New York gets that. New York gets that because they just have so many more little pockets of hidden people. In Boston, they tough, but also Boston's got a lot of, hidden waspy, whatever, fancy pants. It's a lot of, the gateway city of college, the river of colleges, all of this. It's a lot of mookity mooks. It's a lot of people who don't wash their own silverware. So I think that's what you're going to get right there, and you get New York that takes that region. So out of there, you got New York, predominantly upstate New York, taking that region. That's where I'm starting at. And that's what I'm going to pull out of that main conversation. Chris, I appreciate your call. Let's take another call right here. Here we go.
Hey, Theo, this is Ryan. And even though I'm from the state of Pennsylvania, I'm going to have to say Hawaii would probably win the war of the states, just due to the fact that they're so isolated from the rest of the country out, and they have the natural defense system of the ocean around them. And I doubt the other states would have like a developed Navy or Air Force, so they'd probably just be the last men standing, basically, because no one wants to go and fuck with them. And they could probably even negotiate with Kim Boy over in Korea and borrow some nukes maybe to use. So I'm going to have to go with Hawaii.
Wow. I didn't even think. Here's the crazy part, and I hate to say this. I'm not trying to be rude. I didn't even think about Hawaii. And the truth is, probably nobody did. It's that secret state. It's that state where you get done counting them all, and you're like, damn, what did I forget? And it's Hawaii. And if you're watching on YouTube right now, it's probably getting a little dim in here. That's because the sun went down, and the lampage that I'm using in here isn't super solid. But if you're on audio, you're still good. Ryan, that's a great point. I appreciate that call. Yeah, Hawaii, you don't think about that. You guys have all the water. You guys are going to have military vessels that are going to be sitting out there. Now, New York, I didn't even give you guys credit. You'll have a little bit of that harbor, but to be able to access that harbor over there in New York, I mean, you're dealing with a lot of other you're dealing with, it's going to be tight over there on the East Coast getting out of that harbor. So I think that harbor ends up being kind of nullified over there on that upper East Coast. But Hawaii, yeah, it's a 4-hour flight from California. So yeah, Hawaii would probably become this, you guys would just be this safe place, I think, where the fight wouldn't come to there. And it would have to be if you guys wanted to go and get into the fight, and I don't think you would. And I think you guys would just be able to find some peace over there on your island, or divide into, go off into the separate islands, Kauai, and, certain people with certain beliefs and everything end up in those islands and defending their own territories. But that's a great point, man. Hawaii's going to tie no matter who it is. All right, let's get into another call here that came in. Here we go.
What's up, Theo? It's your boy Brian from Bonita Springs, Florida again.
Hey, Brian, thanks for calling in from Bonita Springs. And I've been down there one time. I don't remember what I was doing, but I also remember trying to make love to a woman that worked at what was that place called? It was a bakery. Baker's Rack? I'm not sure. Onward?
Man, I'm calling about if all the states started fighting each other in a war. Man, I want to say Florida would win, but we're out here sleeping. A lot of people, they're on them pills out here. So I really don't think Florida would even be in the top 20.
Oh, yeah, that's dilaudid country. You get out there in the mid-Florida, man, you don't even know. The candy machine got opioids in it. You know, you give a kid a nickel and he comes back, he come back with a little handful of cinnamon opioids. So yeah, I think you do deal with some of that over there. Onward, let's hear more of your call.
I think Texas would have to win. And you know that's true. They got all them guns out there. Most of the people there are probably drunk on at least 16 beers. So they'd be running around, probably most of them wearing a cowboy hat.
Oh, that's speculation, man. And that's hat wear speculation and alcohol speculation. Let's hear more.
Got some spurs on the back of a pair of New Balances with a damn revolver on their hips. So I think they're probably already ready for a war.
Now, I'll agree with you there that I think I wouldn't be surprised if Texas might already be ready. Let's look at that southeast region. Let's take that into account really quick. Okay, so Florida, you think you guys might be too pilled up. But you have all those bays and outlets to water. You have all that water access. I think there would be a lot of interstate war in Florida before. That's the problem. Some of these states aren't on the same page enough. People from Miami, they're all going to leave and go back to whatever original country that they, came from, pretty much. Tampa, I mean, that's pirate country. So a lot of them are going to get their boats out and be ready to rock. So you can have that Navy right there out of Tampa. Orlando, those people are all going to fly back to their original states, because they're all down there they're all just Instagram and Disney. And then you'll have Jacksonville. Jacksonville's a bunch of hardheads. And I think a lot of Jacksonville, they might roll up to Atlanta and Georgia and join up with Atlanta. So I think you'd have North Florida versus South Florida. And who's going to win that one? I mean, you have a lot of guns. Actually, from Pensacola to Jacksonville, I think you have a lot of guns. And I think a lot of those people might join forces. Now, Miami, if you've seen the first 48, they got a lot of guns in Miami. So I think Florida would implode. You would have too many people fighting amongst themselves. I think a lot of these northern cities, Pensacola, Panama City Beach, Tallahassee, Jacksonville, they would probably move off to join other cities. They'd move off to join Atlanta. They'd move off to join Mobile. And also some over to New Orleans. I think you'd have Tampa a fleet would leave, planning to go attack, but they would probably start drinking. A lot of Buccaneers fans, they got that cannon. And next thing you know, they would end up in New Orleans and join up with Louisiana. So Louisiana is going to have a little bit of an increased force. All right, now you got Atlanta. And a lot of this is where a lot of Civil War battles were fought. So you're going to have a lot of nostalgia. You're going to have a lot of people selling Civil War II artifacts and like autographed posters. Tonight speaking at the bar, we got the great-great-grandson of Robert E. Lee, or, we're playing Glory tonight and everybody come watch. It's a fundraiser. You can have a lot of that. Now, Nashville's pretty split. It's like liberal and conservative. So I think in places like that, you can have a lot of, dissension within the ranks. People that want to fight, people that don't. And it's going to be tough to really put together a good militia in some of those places. Alabama, those people are going to go have guns. I have a brother-in-law from Alabama, and he had on underwear one night, and he said, "How many guns do you think I have on me?" And he was wearing just underwear. And this man was bodily unattractive. He had kind of like cute ears a little bit, but bodily unattractive. And he had 2 guns on his person at the time. So that's what's going on there. That's gun country. Mississippi ain't going to do shit, man. No disrespect, but they can't even win an SEC title, really. So they're not going to make it pop. Atlanta could turn up. But Atlanta, if racial tension starts, I don't know if that's going to happen. If racial tension starts in Georgia between black and white, then it might get weird. If people are able to band together, then Georgia could be a real force. South Carolina, North Carolina, they would fight each other. And I think that they would cancel each other out. Because for some reason, they have so much just angst against each other, they wouldn't be able to make it out of there. Nashville, I think that they would implode. They got the mountains, though. So when you got those mountains, that gives you a really that high ground is crucial. And that's what's going to help Arkansas. But Arkansas, I think, they're still trying to get a lot of, I don't think they're still trying to figure out who's family and who isn't family. And there's still too many domestic disputes over there. I think that they would end up fighting each other more. So coming out of that South, I think you're going to have New Orleans down there. But they're having so much fun down in New Orleans. You know, a lot of the gunplay down there, a lot of the crime there is black on black. So you'd have to really, band together and get a good, black and white militia to band together, I think, for Louisiana to have a good shot. But I think Georgia's going to be your power player, Georgia or Alabama, coming out of that southeast region. And maybe Tennessee, but, I just don't know. Now, Texas, then we get over to Texas, and I'll tell you straight up, Texas is used to defending a border out of the gate. So they're going to have that ability out of the gate. Texas is used to defending a border. So they already have all that experience. Bang, bang. So that's going to be huge. Texas is a lot of hard-working, show-up men. And I don't care what ethnicity or anything, that shit doesn't matter as much in Texas. In Texas, it's about do your shit or get the fuck out of here. And so I think they're going to bring that style of play to this war. And I think out of the gate, that's going to whoop Louisiana's ass. They'll whoop Arkansas. There's actually a town called Texarkana, which is Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana. It's the corner of all three. And that town would just be called Texas Town because they're going to whoop ass. New Mexico, a lot of those people might head back to regular Mexico out of fear. So I think you got Texas going to whoop ass around there. Oklahoma's a lot of bad boys. And it's a lot of Native American people. So that, that's, you're going to be dodging bullets and ducking arrows. That's going to be hard to do. But I think Texas does that. I think Texas really, really does that. Now, over to this West Coast, and you got Arizona, Las Vegas. Dude, Las Vegas, they're going to take all that money and run off. They're going to be gone. Nobody's defending that place. Nobody's even from there. Everybody's out of Nevada. Utah, they're going to be praying for everything to work out for everyone. And I think we will all need that. So I'm hopeful that they'll do that. Arizona, a fifth of that state is probably illegal, or maybe a 12th or something. And I'm not saying that to offend anybody. I used to live in Tucson, Arizona. I had a lot of friends there that were not legal citizens. So, whatever. But I think a lot of that group's going to leave. I don't think they're going to be able to hold it down. So then I think you have Texas and California. They're going to have to, really go toe-to-toe at some point. Washington and Oregon will probably refuse to fight. They'll probably try to, have a cook-off or do something more peaceful. Even though you have a lot of cowboys, you got a lot of bad boys out there. In eastern Washington and eastern Oregon, a lot of real deal cats. But I think that they're going to merge up in some other group. And they might band together out there in the hills of Idaho. So now you got men out there in the hills of Idaho, men and women. You got families just holding up out there. And I think that'll actually just become a group that won't fight as much as they will just start to take care of themselves. But then Texas is going to want a piece of California. Just because everybody wants a piece of it, but they're the closest ones. Now, California, man, they got a lot of hard heads coming out of San Francisco, out of Oakland, Hayward, Sacramento, the home of missing people. San Jose, one of the most peaceful communities. You got, Los Angeles. Everybody's going to leave Los Angeles and go back to either their home countries or their home cities. Nobody's defending that place. San Diego, a lot of the military is there, right? But that military is from other states. And a lot of that military they're gun owners, So a lot of those military, they're going to head back to their original states. So you got to factor them in elsewhere. That's why I think California folds. I don't think they have the chance. They have a ton of land. It would be some huge battles. But I think at some point you have Texas taking that whole southwestern border on the north side of Mexico. And I think that, and let me look at the Midwest really quick. Wisconsin, cheese is a major ingredient. You can't fight on fucking queso. You're going to be all boweled up. You guys are going to be shitting in the woods. That could be very alarming. Also slow. A lot of them Wisconsin boys, they big, but they slow. But they can fight in the winter because they're used to being in the cold. Indiana, where the Ku Klux Klan started, a lot of violence out there in Indiana. I wouldn't be surprised to see them show up. Ohio, they're in the national championship almost every other year, so you're going to think they're going to put something together. I think Ohio beats Michigan. I know everybody from Michigan is going to say, fuck, no way they beat us. But they beat 2-year football teams every year, Michigan and Michigan State. So let's don't pretend like it might not be possible. Ohio beats Michigan. Indiana, the problem with Indiana is a lot of their youth over there and like some of these colleges and stuff, there are a lot of transplants. Indiana University is a lot of transplants. So who's going to Ohio's going to take Indiana. You go to Ohio taking Indiana. Missouri, a lot of swingers out there, a lot of people eating at the buffet, you know, Wiener and Vagina. So I think Ohio takes that. You got the Dakotas, Minnesota could come down. Kansas, Colorado. Now, a lot of these men, they're living on land and prepared to defend themselves. But what does that look like if it really gets wild? I think a lot of those men, they would band together. I think there'll be a faction over there in Colorado. So you'll have a group in Colorado. You'll have a group in Idaho up in those mountains. That's kind of that northeastern group. You'll have Texas, which is taking over to the southeastern border. You'll have Georgia. You'll have New York, which is a lot of upstaters, a lot of them business cats in the city. They're out. They ain't got the balls to fight, man. They just got the balls to do banking. And then you got that Midwest region. I think Ohio will come over. But that Midwest, they don't like each other so much that I don't know if they're going to be able to band together. So a lot of them might fizzle out. Wisconsin, you got a lot of cats. And they're so nice. Minnesota, nice. You can't win a war on nice. So I think they're going to fold. Minnesota would try and beat another place and then send a get well card, which is sweet, but not in war. We're talking about war. The Dakotas, North Dakota, South Dakota, they get together, but who gives a fuck? That's still only about 70 people. And Mount Rushmore. But that's just, those 4 people are made out of stone. Doesn't count. So you got Kansas, Oklahoma. Oklahoma's some bad cats. Now, Oklahoma, I think you'll see Oklahoma band up with a faction there from the Northeast. So then that's what I think you got, man. I think you got Georgia. I think you got Texas. I think you got that upstate New York. They're going to roll through Philadelphia. Jersey. Nah, man, this ain't everybody doing test 200 in DECA. That shit ain't going to fly. It's not going to cut it. You guys are done. Delaware, they'll probably boat back to England. They're done. Maryland's thuggish, but Baltimore is drugged out. It's the Walking Dead, yo. So Baltimore, I think, will be under, even though they got that, but you have that Naval Military Academy. So if them boys choose to stand up and fight for that academy, you could have a real faction right there. So that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. And I'll finish that up on Thursday. I think I'll talk about it a little bit more about what is how does this play out? How does it finish out? If you guys have some thoughts and you want to chime in, hit that hotline, 985-664-9503. But I feel like that's kind of where it's at. And to me, I've always kind of felt like Texas would take it. But now that I'm looking at some of the geography, I think you'll just end up with some separate groups here and there. And that would kind of become some of the new, America. And I didn't even think about Chicago. I think Chicago is just going to be kind of this hub where a lot of, whoever wins that Midwest is going to take over Chicago. So whatever state that is. Illinois, they could do something. I don't know. What do you think? You think I'm crazy? Hawaii sitting out there on the outside? Man, you're making me want to move to Hawaii, that's for sure. That seems like the place to be. Man. All right, let's take one more call here. Here we go. About this issue.
Hey, Theo. Tim here from Australia. Just thinking about who was going to win the war between all the states.
And Tim is from Australia, and it figures that Tim would be thinking about it because Australia, predominantly criminals, people doing crime, or people whose grandparents did crime. Because you had to do crime to end up in Australia. Let's hear more.
Now, you've got to consider, numbers are obviously, the primary sort of driver here, so, and gun ownership and so on. So, Vermont, first to fall. The fighting men and women of Ben and Jerry's 3rd Division, they'll hold out for maybe a good 5 minutes. They're out early.
Right, so Vermont's out early. They're going to be hopped up on dairy. Onward.
Montana, great fighters, yes. But only 1 million people up there, I think, something like that. They'll ride this one out in the hills. You know, they'll come back afterwards, but they're not going to be on the podium. Louisiana, now low population, high gun ownership, good fighting disposition, and importantly, ocean access. Because this isn't just a land war. I mean, you know, if you've got ocean access, you've got to use it. You're going to have your boats out there. I think your home state might do better than you think. Now we get to the big number states, and you're thinking, you know, New York, California, squishy sort of, you know, Hillary voting people. But, you know, New York state is around 20 million, I think, California 40 million. So even if you have a percentage of those people armed and willing to have a go, they might do better than you think.
That's a good point. That's a good point just based on sheer numbers. You know, so say if you have just 25% of 20 million and they're willing to fight, that's 4 or 5 million, I'm not sure, with guns. And if you put them up against Montana and you arm everyone, that's 5 million against 1 million. So those numbers are going to play a big issue. That's going to be a big deal. That's a really, really good point. That might have to make me reconsider some things. Onward.
Do better than you think. Also, ocean access. This is potentially a crucial aspect in the great United States War of 2018, 19, 20, however long it lasts. Then you get to the big dog here, Texas.
And that's true because that ocean access, if you can get a group to sit out in the ocean, they can just shoot in at another group. They can bomb in, or they can just wait and let the fighting subside, which is what Ryan's talking about from Hawaii. Is just sitting out there eating pineapples and, you know, touching each other's assholes, you know? Let's hear more.
People, all the oil, all the resources, they can keep this battle up for a long, long time, and a civilian population armed and knowledgeable about weapons. Texas for mine, my friend.
And there you go. And then that's an Australian voting for Texas right there. And Australia had one fight, I think, a long time ago, and it was called Gallipoli. And there's a movie about it where Mel Gibson got in a fight with one of his cousins, I think. It wasn't a home video, I don't think. I think it was an actual film that you can see, and it was pretty good. But that's it. If you got some thoughts on who would maybe take that next episode, you know, who would take that, you know, is there something I'm not thinking about one of these states? Because, I mean, look, you never know what can happen. I mean, crazy things have happened. Yeah, could it happen? And that's another thing. Do you think there could be a state war looming? Am I crazy? Are you crazy? Hit that hotline, man, 985-664-9503. And we're going to get into a couple more calls about other topics right now. Some people called in. And I'm going to tell you guys, too, that I will be at Fantasy Springs Casino in Indio, California this weekend, the 23rd and 24th of February. I'll be in Tacoma, March 15th and 16th, and Spokane, the 17th of March. I'll be in Oxnard, the 23rd and 24th and 25th of March. And then April, I'll be at Bananas Comedy in Hasbrook Heights, April 20th and 21st in Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey. And those are some of the dates that we have on the books right now. Some other things we'll be getting in. Oh, Tampa. I'll be in Tampa April 6th and 7th, and you can grab those tickets now. All those tickets are available through theovon.com/tour, TOUR. But yeah, there's probably a lot of tactical things that I don't understand, you know, about war and fighting and that sort of thing. And I'd love to know if some people have things that I'm not even considering that would really affect the way that would all lay down. Let's take a couple more callers here, man. I appreciate you guys calling and hitting the hotline. And we will do a follow-up episode this Thursday where we kind of chime in, where we put some of you guys' calls into, you know, just in the response to the states, the war of the states, and in response to some of this other activity and this and that. All right, praise God. Here we go.
Hey, Theo, just wanted to call and had a question for you because I'm struggling right now. My whole department got laid off last Friday, and I've been in the dark arts for a while. And for the last couple of years, since I got back from overseas, things have been good, but started off difficult, and now it's been going great. And now that I got laid off, and I feel that pull, and I was just wondering what you do in addition to talk to other people, who are like-minded.
Thanks for calling, man. Yeah, when you get in that tough situation, the dark arts seem to be, sometimes it's that first line of defense. It's like the first thing you think to do when things are going tough is to do something that's, not cavalier for yourself and not real positive. And sometimes it's hard. It's hard when I know, like, for example, if I feel like, I'm doing a good streak and no, masturbation, no doing no masty, no doing no masty. And then next thing you know, I find myself by myself and something happens. I have a bad show, or I don't get a job, or I don't get on the Tonight Show, or just something that makes me feel not good. Then I resort to, I'm just thinking, oh, fuck it, man. Life sucks. I'm a jerk off all over myself. And I'll get into that space. But when I find that those things don't happen as much, or when I don't choose to go into those dark art avenues, is when I'm with other people. If I spend time with people that I care about, then I notice that my brain doesn't go there. Instead, my brain will bring up the problem to somebody. Bring up the problem to a loved one or a friend or something. Say, hey, man, this happened. And they'll be like, oh, everything's going to be okay. And the next thing you know, I get back to a comfortable square in my brain instead of living out there in that wild, dark art Tetris, where the squares are just coming at you and you're just jerking off. So that's something that I find is spending time with others. Spending time with others. And there's other little things, and everybody does it different. People do meditations. People go for a walk. People do little things because usually that temptation arises and it'll just sit on you for a little bit. The temptation to act out, the temptation to, run around on your spouse, or the temptation, to flirt with a girl, the temptation to cause trouble, raise hell. That pull, that little pull inside of you. Oh, things didn't go well, I'm going to get fucked up. This didn't happen, I'm going to buy a couple grams of cocaine and fucking race rats out there outside of the city limits where you legally can. I'm going to make them choices. But that's just like about 30 seconds or 90 seconds that pull is there. And if you can ride out and you don't give in to that initial pull, usually things are fine. Usually you can get through it and get back to your regular brain. And your regular brain is, it sounds like one that's doing pretty good. Like you've had some good things going for yourself since you got back from service. But I appreciate your service, man, and I appreciate you calling in, Austin. Let's go another call right here. Here we go.
Hey, Theo. I kind of needed your input or opinion on the fact that I've been basically propositioned by wealthy men to enter into some sort of like relationship. Even before I turned 18, this has been going on, and I recently moved to LA.
Okay, so you got wealthy men throwing them bucks for them fucks. You got wealthy men offering that booty cash. They're trying to swipe that card between your ass cheeks. And it's popular, especially out here in Los Angeles. I think a lot of men also, there's this whole new side of that, where a lot of men are just in fear of being with a woman where there isn't a transaction, because then there's no clear terms of what's going on. It makes me wonder if prostitution, or if, legalization of prostitution might be on the looming on the horizon, because men are afraid to even, do regular sex or touch regular local cooter. I mean, I get nervous. I won't even jerk off in the city limits anymore. I drive outside of town and jerk off. If you see me jerking off out somewhere outside of town with a group of other men, it's not a gay thing. It's just straight men trying to just survive. That's all that is. You know, I don't come locally usually if I can help it, because the risk reward is too much in Los Angeles. But I appreciate you calling, young lady. And you've been propositioned by these men, and let's hear more about it.
And the concentration of this sort of thing is at an all-time high. I don't know if it's like a curse or what, but it's something I've like always been against, even when it came to pursuing my own aspirations and dreams, etc. It's just not something that I really believe in.
Okay, so it's not something you really believe in, you know, slinging that canal out there to, you know, to get ahead or to make a little bit of cash. Okay, let's hear more.
But right now, my entire family is in financial strain, going through a lot of hardships, and we've never been rich or anything like that, but it's just really hard to have every single member of my family going through this financial hardship. And then earlier today, my sister's dad was in a freak accident and in Puerto Rico.
Damn, Puerto Rico, and that's accident country. And if you have a friend that's very accident prone, I think it's safe at this point to nickname him or her Puerto Rico, because you know, they got bad moons rising over there, and they got that juju hitting the air and that voodoo, you know, gripping the people onward.
They don't know if he's going to make it or not because that island still has no electricity, and it's just tragic because we don't even know if my sister's going to get to go. You know, it's just like a whole mess. And I've just been struggling with if, you know, this whole, you know, moral compass, and, you know, I would never do such a thing. It's not necessarily me being selfless. I could have been struggling with this voice in my head telling me, like, wow, you're not willing to sacrifice for your family. Because the amount of money that these gentlemen are offering me, it would make a substantial difference in my family's life.
Okay, and that's just where the call ends right there. That's it. Thank you for calling, young lady. And that's a conundrum. That's a conundrum. You know, I mean, my first thought is no. You don't do that. But that, I think, is also an old idea. You know, I think it's, you know, I never had that. You know, I got that decent dick, but I never had anything that people really wanted real heartily, and they was coming to pay for it. I never had that pay for dick. I've just had that, you know, get it when they get it dick. And sex is a commodity. It's one of the biggest commodities out there. It's pushed constantly. In fact, as I was jogging today, I saw so many tits and asses and breasts and, you know, I mean, you could see outlines of vulvas and you could see trimesters. You could see everything. And it made me think, like, damn. Like, when I was growing up, sex was what you were trying to get. And now, I don't even know if that's the case anymore. I think now sex is available. Readily available. And what you're trying to get is something real. Something tangible. Something that, you know, when you throw it down into your heart, it echoes. You know, something that that reverberates. And so, you know, with that thought, look, if you got to get out there and do it, honey, you get out there and do it. You know, I'm not going to be mad at you. There's women doing it for far less reasons. That's for sure. And there's women doing it for real reasons. And I know it's a tough world. You know, I know it's a tough world. And I can't, you know, I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you I'd let one of these fancy producers maybe, when I first moved to town, put his thumb in my ass for probably, you know, 30 grand or something. Maybe I would. I don't know. I didn't get that opportunity. You know, I haven't gotten very many opportunities in Hollywood. But, you know, I mean, it's sweet that you're thinking about it for your family. You know, and I can't imagine what that's like to have family somewhere struggling. Your sister's father, that part seemed a little wild to me. Your sister's father, is that your father? I mean, if a tree fell on him or something, it's not your father. Let me hear that part again. Here we go.
Dreams, etc. It's just not something that I really believe in. But right now, my entire family is in financial strain, going through a lot of hardships, and we've never been rich or anything like that, but it's just really hard to have every single member of my family going through this financial hardship. And then earlier today, my sister's dad was in a freak accident, and in Puerto Rico, they don't know if he's going to make it or not because the island still has no electricity. And
your sister's dad? Yeah. I mean, maybe I'm just getting, picky there with some of the facts and whatever. I'd like to see you try to find other ways to get through it. But these days, if it does, what does it mean to you? I mean, does it mean a lot to you? Does sex mean a lot to you? If you don't, if it means a lot to you, then I think you find some other way to fight through it and get through it. If it doesn't mean anything to you, maybe that's the deal. And I don't say you get a broker or something, but I say you get out there and you get some good money. It just seems like the things that are going to come along with that environment are what really scares me for you. Women selling sex has been from the beginning of time. Everybody's selling sex in some form or another. A lot of these makeup ads, there's billboards in Los Angeles that say sugar models on every other corner. While the whole time there's this, time's up movement, there's also this whole other movement where it's just, sex is just becoming an item for exchange. And maybe that's a safer place for it. I don't know. I think this is just another big conversation kind of that, are we in a different time now? Am I living by old ideals? What's going on? Am I out of touch that, now it's it's more about the other side of things? Finding the connectivity? Finding something that's real? When I was young, it was about catching that nut locker, about finding a little lady that would let you, hide your root up in that nut locker. And now it's changed, it seems like. Now it's more, now it seems more like anybody can fuck, You can, get sex here or there, internet, wherever. What else can I get something that actually, that I can feel? So, that's it. And I don't know if that gives you some suggestions or not. Maybe some of our callers will have suggestions for that. And I think that that's a big topic. That's a big thought. That's a big idea. What does she do? What would you recommend? If this is my daughter, I'm going to say no. If this is, and people would even say, well, that's fucked up. If this is my sister, I'd say, but it's like, who am I to, what I'm saying? I don't know what, if it was my sister, I would help her out. I would get her out of those financial situations. I would say, no, we're not doing this shit. So I guess when I put it like that to myself, that it's more family, then it makes me really question. I don't know. I just wonder has it really gotten to that point where there's no other option? Is there another way that you can do it? Where maybe you try some of these other things. They have these different webcam sites where women are, touching their vaginas and all of that and showing, and flashing vulva and all of that. Showing tits and, breastfeeding babies and everything on there for $30, $40 an hour. Maybe there's something like that available or some other avenues. I don't know. The thing with the sister in Puerto, what are you really going to do there? That's my, what's your, what are you going to make a couple thousand? I know that can really help some instances, but how long does that last? In a huge case scenario with hospital bills, whatever, a weekend, an hour? When does it? I just feel like you're really getting into the dark arts, and that there might be some better avenues. So I'd ask some other people. I'd ask some friends. I'd ask some. I'd ask around, and then I'd try and ask yourself really why. How we doing, you brave little dimpled wiggers? It's Monday, baby. You crispy little Vietnamese warlords, huh? You doing all right? You got diabetes, bro? You got an erection? You got sugar in your dick? What's up? It's this past weekend. Welcome. I'm gonna make you feel some type of way. What's up, guys? That's a little bit of Bueno there. I guess that's a Spanish rap artist. And the album Legends Live Forever. And the song Some Type of Way. Do legends live forever? I guess they do, huh? I mean, you know, we carry them on. We carry them on. If you're a legend, you get carried on. At least for some amount of time. It's Monday, February 20th. Welcome to this past weekend. It is, it's literally about midnight here on the Pacific time region. I'm Theo Vaughn. Thank you for joining me. I hope you had a nice weekend. Wish you a happy Monday wherever you are. Valentine's Day has come and gone. Hopefully you are still in love or just battling your loneliness better than you were last week. All right. What's going on? We've got a lot going on. We're going to get into some calls. We got a great deal more calls. I'm excited about that. Eventually we will do the calls live, but for the time being, I've been on the road and I have not had the opportunity to set that up yet, to facilitate that. So we will get to that. I'm letting you know this week I'll be in Denver. I'm going to let you know right now. If you have a friend in Denver, you know, I need people to come out to the shows. That's my livelihood. And I would appreciate it if you have a friend in Denver that wants to come out. Let them know. I'll be at the Comedy Works South down in Denver, Colorado. And that is this Thursday through this Sunday, February 23rd through 26th. And then next weekend, March 4th, I'll be at the Admiral Theater in Bremerton, Washington. And that's Washington State. It's one of the big 50 states, and it's up there in the Northwest. Big state, large area, known for what? Fish, outdoors, you know, pine. Probably a lot of bodies out in the woods, I'll be honest with you. You know, I love those type of murder mystery shows. I mean, honestly, I'll be honest with you, I can't even sleep at night, really, unless I've seen one of those programs where somebody's been murdered or if there's buried treasure. I just have that. I'm an addict. I guess I'm an addict, and I'm addicted to those things. You know, knowing about new murders and buried treasure. So, and if somebody dies and is wearing like a fancy brooch, I mean, that's a rare brooch. That's double comfort for me. That's double comfort. Good to be here with you guys. Thank you for joining me. The news, I'm just going to hit this brief news topic. Speaking of Washington State, a man got stopped, okay, in the HOV lane, that is the carpooling lane, where you were allowed to drive with friends or maybe children at a certain age. You can't sneak a baby into the front seat. That doesn't count. If you're doing that, that's nasty. You know, put your kid in the back seat, especially if it's just a baby and it's not making any choices for itself and you're putting it up there in the front seat so you can get to work quicker. It's a beautiful idea, but it's probably not safest. But a man got caught with a mannequin in his front passenger seat, but it was like a hot mannequin, like he'd put like a blonde wig on it. It seemed to have a nice, at least a C cup. The cop stopped him. And my thought is, like, if you're going to put a mannequin up there, put a busted-ass mannequin. I mean, a beautiful blonde mannequin is surely going to capture the desires of the eyes of an officer, you know? So that's just baffling, I guess. You know, you got to get a schlubby mannequin. Get a fucking thick uncle, you know, and that's always been one of my issues with mannequins, you know, with these mannequin makers and distributors of of fictional human figurines is that the mannequins are never realistic. You know, I remember shopping when I was a child, shopping during the holidays, and it's like, I don't know if that sweater's gonna, where's the mannequin with the hunchback, or where the mannequin with the big mole on its neck, you know? Because how am I gonna know if that sweater's gonna fit my grandmother if the mannequin don't have a hunchback? You know, I need to know if that sweater, I need a mannequin that's taken up a couple extra, maybe 2 more square feet up around the upper spine to know if that mannequin is, if that sweater is going to fit my grandmother. So I've always been, I guess, disappointed in mannequins. You know, or what about a mannequin with a little bit of like a limp, maybe 1 foot shorter than the other? My father, when I was a child, he had this gentleman that worked for him, just did some day work here and there. This kind of, he was a handicapped gentleman. What was his name? Marks was his name, a black gentleman, and he would watch us from time to time when my dad had to work. When we went to the office with my dad, Marks would watch us. And Marks had 1 foot, or 1 leg was about probably 3-4 inches shorter than the other. You know, he was coming up light in one of his appendages. He was real, just I guess, shy in the femur. And so he would always stand on this stoop so that he looked even, you know, and he wouldn't really leave this little stoop. It was a few inches of concrete that were outside of the front door. And he would stand there with his 1 foot on the stoop and his other foot on the natural pavement or natural earth. And he would be even. And I remember that man, we would spend time with him. He would take us to the hot dog cart and get us a hot dog. And a bird attacked him one time. He got attacked by a bird pretty good. It was just a violent pigeon, I think. And they have those in a lot of, you know, in areas where, this was down in New Orleans, and they have a lot of violent birds down there. Those inner city birds that have, I guess, just been through hell, and, you know, they're not out there living in natural habitat as much as other animals or other birds are. Spent some time around birds in my day. But yeah, that man would watch us, and he had a short limb. And I always thought that mannequins should be more realistic. You know, I'd love to see somebody come out with some realistic mannequins. You know, how do I know if this, you know, if this shirt or, you know, blouse is going to fit my father or mother if the mannequin don't look like it's about to whoop my ass, you know? Like, that's the mannequin I'd like to see in the store. A mannequin with a spatula in its hand and an angry look on its face. Then put the blouse on it, and I'll be like, oh, definitely that's for Dad. So I've always had issues with mannequins. What else, guys? Good to chat with you here. It's been a crazy weekend. I was down in La Jolla, which is just a Spanish town, I guess, south of Los Angeles. And it rained, man. And it rained, and it was Category 2 rain, probably a basic 2. But people were nervous, shy. People just sharing things they shouldn't be saying. Just dude up on the street ran up to me and just told me he was gay. And I was like, dude, you don't have to. I don't think this rain is going to be that bad where you got to spill all your secrets. But it got pretty wild, man. I spent the weekend down in La Jolla doing shows at the La Jolla Comedy Store, my favorite place. I shot a documentary with some British documentarians. And they have a new documentary coming out in a few weeks. It's called Dying Laughing. And I'm going to be in that. So if you see that playing somewhere, or you get the opportunity to get that on the internet, I'll be in there. They're interviewing comedians about their lifestyles. So that was that, man. And I've never been a big fan of the British, dude. I'll go ahead and say it. You know, and I told these gentlemen that. And they actually kind of rekindled a little bit of my faith maybe in the British, or the OA. I call them the original Americans, because we were over there. You forget that sometimes, that we were over there, and as far as we learned in history class growing up, we left there to have religious freedom, right? Just on a boat. I mean, you got to really not like someone to just get on a boat and be like, we're out of here. And they're like, well, where are you going? And you're like, we don't know. That's pretty brave, dude. Just to go. Imagine not liking someone so much. You get on a boat and just go. And the odds are you're not even going to live. That's pretty ballsy, man. But yeah, The Patriot, one of my favorite movies, you know that. The Family Man, that's another one of my favorite films with Nicolas Cage. If you haven't seen that movie, then your life is probably full of holes. You must have the Swiss cheese life. Do you have that? Look at your life. Does it smell like mold that could go on a sandwich? Because you probably have a Swiss cheese life. I love that movie. We got a house in Jersey. We got 2 kids, Annie and Josh. Man, I love that movie. Make me think about love and what love means, and taking advantage of love. That movie does that for me. But yeah, the British, I just never, I don't like it when the British are milling around over here. Like, what are you doing, dude? We beat y'all. We beat y'all, okay? Look at the scoreboard, Daddy Bear. We beat you. And you got British people just wandering around over here in the U.S., and I'm like, just never been keen on it. Taking jobs, too. Taking movie roles and television roles, especially in entertainment. I'm like, what? You're going to give this to a British person before you give it to a natural-born American? Or an English, basic, I don't know, just makes me angry. But these men were good. We did the documentary, we had some interviews, so it kind of adjusted my faith. And they were talking about, in school in Britain, they learned that we got exiled from Britain. Like, we were such schlubs over there, or such mooks, that they just sent us packing. And I'm like, well, that's crazy, because they teach us in America that we left. So it's pretty interesting to see that on different shores, the education is different as to what really happened. Makes you wonder what kind of education is going on in all other parts of the world. Like, we're all just learning about different realities. I guess our perceptions are different. So that was interesting, man. Because I'm telling them, I'm like, we didn't leave. Like, we left because, we wanted religious freedom. I mean, that's what I'd learned. And they're like, whatever, we sent y'all packing. We gave you a little bit of money. We didn't think you'd actually find a place. You guys left on 60-foot wooden boats that were filled with diseases. Like, most of y'all's luggage was chlamydia. So, just interesting in their perception, and the perception based on what I had learned growing up. But yeah, the British, I spent some time with the British. And what else happened this weekend? What else happened? It rained. People out here on the West Coast, they think the world's going to end. I loved rain growing up. It would rain, and the ditch would get filled up. And if you were poor, if you grew up in a poor environment, that was your swimming pool. If the ditch was filled, you had opportunity to get out there and practice a few of your strokes, Sure, the pool was like 90 feet by 4 feet, but it was a blast, man. And we'd get out there and be in the ditch, and you could wear whatever. You could swim in pants, you could swim in long sleeves. It didn't matter. There was no lifeguard, there was no etiquette. So you could get out there and just be nasty out in the water and just practice a few moves, and had some good times swimming in the ditch, I remember. All right, what else, man? I got a little lonely, I'll admit that. I got a little lonely this past week. I don't know if Valentine's kind of turned it on. Valentine's, I was in New York City, and on Valentine's evening. I flew to New York on Valentine's, and my only real Valentine was I think my mother sent a text out, a mass text to the children, me and my 3 siblings, and told us that she loved us, and that was nice. And I sent a text back to them letting them know that, that I love my family, and that was good. And then I was on the airplane, and they passed out Prosecco, a type of champagne, and a little box of fancy chocolates on Delta Airline, on the Airjet. And man, they had 2 beautiful little chocolates, little balls, just in a little bitty case, a beautiful little box. And they gave one to everybody on the plane, and everybody got their own little bottle of champagne. And I don't drink, so I passed on the champagne, but the chocolates, man, you opened it up, the little box, and they had 2 beautiful dark little balls in there. Just 2 little just brother nuts in there, just dusty and just kind of old man nuts, it looked like. And man, I just popped one of them things in my mouth and just felt joy and sugar and everything. So that was a good time. What else do I want to tell you guys about, man? Trying to think of a Valentine when I was young. I think I talked about Valentine's last week, so maybe I'll stay away from it. We had a lot of good people come out to the shows this weekend. Shared some stories about growing up. Used to bury animals when I was growing up. I had a friend of mine. He was born with some deficiencies, and he was born with a wrist in his neck. And I might have told you guys this, but he was born with a wrist in his neck. A wrist bone has many opportunities. If you ever look at your wrist and you move your hand around in natural, your hand can almost orbit, the top of your arm, the end of your arm, that's your wrist. And this boy was born with a wrist in his neck. And so his head was just constantly just going in a circle. Just a constant, he had this condition, just a constant circle. And, if you had he was easy to do magic on. I'll tell you that, dude, because he was missing, 60% of the time he was missing while you were trying to talk to him. Because of this rotation he was on. He was just basically his head was just constantly orbiting his own shoulders, just orbiting around his body almost. And he was my best friend, and he was born also, he had extra salivary glands in his face. And when he was feeling real joyous, he would spray out the sides of his mouth a little. And he was a good friend of mine. He was easy to do magic on as well, and basically talking to him was almost like playing double dutch. You had to catch him when he was you had to catch him when he was passing by, you had to get him right here, because otherwise you had to get him right there. You had to catch him. So anyhow, we used to bury animals on Saturday because a lot of animals got hit by our house and killed by motor vehicles, cars, trucks, everything. And we would get out there on Saturday and, just looking for something to do. We'd bury the animals a lot of times, pull them off of the road, bury them. And one time, I don't even know if I told you guys this story. If I did, I'm sorry. But one time we found some nudie magazines in the dirt. We found some nudie magazines. You know what I'm saying, boy, titty literature. And man, we were fired up. That made him spray out the sides of his mouth, just his body, just feeling the perversions of these booklets, of these little sex booklets. And so we got to looking at these magazines, but somebody in the magazines, okay, in each picture they got people in there and doing sex and just being nasty. And in the pictures, though, somebody had cut out right where the peenie and the vagina kind of just met each other. Somebody cut that area out. Just cut out that insertion, In each picture, man, we look at the first page and somebody cut it out with a knife or a small saw. And then we look at the next page and the same thing, right where the penises and the vaginuses were just just shaking each other's hands, proverbially speaking. Somebody cut that area out. And then we looked through every picture in every magazine, 5, 6, 7, 800 pictures of insertion missing. Somebody running around our town really with a bunch of fuckfetti on them. You know, their own little hot package of insertion, you know. So that was kind of wild growing up. I remember that. I don't know whatever happened to that boy, Danny. His name was Danny, and they called him Hot Danny because he would get dizzy from his head spinning, and you'd have to sit him down and rest him, you know, because that's friendship. That's friendship, man. What else, man? What else is going on? The news, still everybody political. I don't care about it anymore. I got to keep my side of the street clean, dude. I don't have time to worry about all this bullshit, you know. I don't listen to the news anymore. I can't believe in it, though. I just don't trust it. I love freedom of the press. I think we should have it. We need it. You know, but I worry that the press doesn't care if we get factual information a lot of times, and that's scary. That's a scary place to be in. So because then it makes it hard to decide what is factual and what isn't. You know, and that's just scary. So it's just a weird time, man. It's a weird time that we're going through, but at the same time, this is where we are. You know, my biggest issue these days is basically with electronics and just social media and all of that. We don't communicate anymore, you know? We just, like back in the day, I didn't know what my friends were doing. I just wondered what they were doing. You know, I didn't know where they were. I just hoped they were somewhere. A lot of times I figured that they were somewhere better than I was, and I'd be jealous or envious. But now, you just know. You know everything, so you're not wondering, you know? I like to wonder, man. You know, I like to use my imagination. And I feel like we're just killing our imaginations because everything is just known. We know. I don't want to know anymore. You know, I want to be wise. I want to be educated. But I don't want to know everything. You know, I think science is some science is for perverts, dude. You want to know everything? You want to know every little atom and molecule and nook and cranny, you frickin' pervert? Who are you? No. Guess. Use your imagination. Hope. I mean, I just can't even deal with some of this modern day shit. And I'll call it that. And I know I'm in a feisty mood tonight, okay? I know I'm acting like just like a dirty bear that's just laying in his bed eating fucking snacks. Okay, I'm fired up. I'm just fired up today, man. I've had a tough week, honestly. Oh, you know, I got lonesome, man. I got lonesome this week, dude. Honestly, I think it's just a lot of being on the road, being out there. I've been out four cities the past 4 weeks. I'm going to Denver this week on Wednesday, and I just get anxious. I get angry, and I get lonely. I do, man. I get lonely. That's what I get. And some of it's not even real. Some of it's my brain tells me I'm lonely, and it's not factual. You know, I have still people to communicate with, and I know I have people that love me. But, man, I get set in, you know. I downloaded my Tinder app this week. That's how bad it got, man. I downloaded it and set up my profile and then deleted it. And, you know, I don't know, because a lot of times I get on the app. I hadn't been on the app in months. Maybe 4 months. You know, and I've just been leaving it all up to the hands of just a higher power. But I just got caught up in my own loneliness, you know? You're out there you're just milling around. And I was in New York City, beautiful hotel. I think it was maybe just because Valentine's, you see everybody and they're having, you know, they got their hands full of somebody else's hand. And they're caring about each other, and they got to-go items because they had a nice dinner, and they got their little to-go satchel with things that they might eat tomorrow, or they might even eat 2 days from now. and you're just milling around there with just lonesome feelings, and that shit gets lonesome, dude. Felt like a damn Alaskan. Felt like a man in Alaska. That's what I felt like. I can't even imagine in Alaska, dude. You're just jerking off and it's cold, and most of your friend is probably a fish. People got fish probably. What the fuck is going on, dude? So I got caught up in my feelings this week. You know, I think that's how a lot of millennials would say it. I got caught up in my feelings, and I felt some kind of lonesome. What else, man? We talked about these mannequins. I don't know. Got some cool stuff happening. We got the album coming out soon, 30 Pound Bag of Hamster Bones, on March 3rd. I'm excited about that. Working on some other stories to tell you guys. About the time my mother won a perm on the radio. About this woman who used to live in my neighborhood. She had a panther, killed her cousin. Panther killed her cousin. So that's one way to lose a cousin, dude. You know? I thought about this, man. Bestiality. You know? No bueno. I'll say that. No bueno. Speaking of bueno, dude, let's put him back on, huh? See what he's up to. ATL Shorty. Bueno. Tell what do for pay. Hang tell say, say, day. I'm a smooth operator. Pop top my whip, baby. Love that part, dude. Pop the top of my whip. Used to do whippets, man. Make me think of whippets. I used to work for this man who was cheating on his wife, and I used to work for him at a restaurant. And we used to sneak back in the freezer and do all the whipped cream till our brains was buzzing. And one of the gentlemen I was working with, one of the other bus boys, ended up being a homosexual fella, and he tried to take advantage of me one time when I was high on whippets. And that shit was alarming, dude, because then I thought that maybe nitrous gas made you gay. So I was afraid to hit that nitrous again for a while until somebody set me straight. And if you don't discuss it, brother, let me tell you this, brother. If you don't discuss it, then it's this weird thing that's out there. But if next time you're sitting with your girl, you know, maybe say, hey, the other night or day, whenever this occurred, you know, we were being aggressive with each other's crotches and areas, and you took a swing at the dark arts with one of your digits, you know, and I enjoyed it. Just let her know you enjoyed it some. Let her even show her on your finger how much you enjoyed, because that's crucial. You can enjoy a little, you can enjoy up to the knuckle, you can, you know, who knows what you're going to end up in. But I think you got to bring that up. You got to discuss it. You got to keep the communication open, because that could open up a whole new world. That could open up a whole new world for you guys. Now, myself, have I ever been involved in any butt pleasures? I have not. You know, I've touched my own butt a little bit. You know, maybe while I'm, you know, doing masturbation or something like that, and, you know, felt some joy there. I get a little bit nervous, you know, because I'm not a doctor, and I feel I get a little bit nervous touching my own butthole if I'm not a doctor. But I've never had a woman pleasure me. Actually, you know what? I did have an ex-girlfriend that got pretty aggressive one night, now that I remember it. And she was almost violent about it, and that I didn't enjoy. And it may, you know, it was nervous. I was nervous. She was I felt like she was looking for something, you know, to be honest. I felt like she'd maybe, you know, had left something in my ass. That's how she was behaving. And you know what? Actually, we didn't talk about it, but we were broken up, and it was the last minute thing. It was like just like a last minute touching inside each other's butts. So that was And I'm not going to call her now. I think she's engaged now or something, so I'm not going to, bring it up to her now. And it was drunk, and it was almost a little bit violent, I do remember. Because it was kind of like make-up sex sort of thing, broken ex sex, where you're having sex with your ex, and it's aggressive, and it's that, last hurrah. And I remember her just really attacking inside of my butt with her one of her fingers. I don't remember which finger. And it was interesting. It was, I was drinking at the time. I was under the influence of alcohol. So I don't remember all the feelings. I remember being a little scared. But I do know that I hear a lot of men are letting their women put on plastic phalluses and enjoying the inside of the man's butt like that. And I'm not doing that. I have never done that. And I don't think that I would do that. I don't think that that's, I don't think that's a pastime I want to be involved in. When I think about things I could do with my time, I don't want to do that. I'd rather maybe do something else. But who knows if in the future that could occur. But I guess that's my answer for you, man. I've been involved in some activities like that, and it was just jousting. This girl was just jousting at my asshole, really, and I felt kind of attacked. It felt like almost just like a mockingbird just diving down into your ass a little. And I actually, this makes me think about, I don't know if I told you this story. I used to work on a farm. I worked on a farm in the summertime for my best friend's sister and her husband, and he passed away. Rest in peace, my buddy Richard. He was a really good man, and he was a good friend to me, and he gave me employment on his farm when I was young. And I was not a good employee. He paid me $5 an hour, basically not to fuck anything up. Like, that was my responsibility. Here's $5 an hour. Don't fuck anything up, please. And I was breaking some shit and messing shit up. And so at a certain point, I would just work at the house, even back at their home, not on the farm. And one day they had a man named Johnny, this yard man. And Johnny was an African-American fella and had a huge afro. Beautiful afro. I mean, just a hair warrior. The kind of afro you don't even see anymore. Just beautiful. Just look like like a bouquet. Just like Vidal Sassoon. If he had a bouquet of beautiful flowers that were actually hair, it would be this man's head. And that was Big Johnny the yard man. And Johnny might have been a homosexual. I don't know. There was rumors he was. He actually passed away too. I think of small town HIV. And that's what I'm telling you. And anyhow, one time Johnny got hired to paint the fence around the swimming pool. And they had a pool, just a regular pool where you swim inside of it. And my job was, this was during mockingbird season in Mississippi. And in the spring, mockingbirds, they're dangerous, dude. They're basically the Japanese of birds. They will, if you have an afro especially, they will dive bomb right at your head, just coming down. Especially, they see that afro, that takes them, they're like, this is a hotel for a bird? A huge afro? It's like somebody opened up a hotel down there along the Mississippi River. I'm sure they were telling other birds, there's a hotel down there in Mississippi. So my job was, they had a badminton racket. And my job was to swat at the birds and keep them out of Johnny's hair while he would paint the fence. True story, swear to God. And I just remember how they would just keep coming in. They wouldn't stop, man. It was intense, and I did the best I could. I appreciate you asking. I haven't been in a relationship in about a decade, so that's pretty alarming, I think, at a certain point. And those are things I need to work on, and I'm trying. It's hard. It's hard. Sometimes I don't want to do it. I don't want to deal with what's wrong with me, and I don't even want to find out what's wrong with me. But I had my heart broken, man. And I had my heart broken a couple times, I guess. in high school, I had a high school love. I had a love from high school, and then I went away to college at University of Arizona out there in the desert, where your skin gets chapped and you wake up with a nosebleed for no reason, just because there's no because the air is so hot, it's trying to kill you, and it's dry, and basically the atmosphere is trying to kill you. So if you live in Arizona, you know what I'm talking about. You go outside, if you stay out there, you'll die. That's dangerous. And that's where I was. And my girlfriend had been seeing another man on the side. You know, I'd heard rumors they'd been making love in car parking lots and doing sex in different areas, and that broke my heart. I was brokenhearted. And then, what else? I was in another relationship with a girl, and she, I guess just every time I got out of a relationship with her, I felt brokenhearted, man. I felt, honestly, you know what I felt like? I felt like, this is going to sound weird maybe, but I felt like my mother had left me in a weird way. I just had this, I'd put all my feelings and affections, whichever ones were distorted from growing up that I didn't connect with my own mother, I'd put them on, I'd pin those tails on this donkey. You know, this lady, she wasn't a donkey really, but that's just a metaphor. And I'd pin the tails on that donkey, and I was brokenhearted when she let me go. And I was a shit boyfriend. I mean, I was a canoodling, you know, spraying out on other ladies and, you know, just being nasty. I was being nasty. My eyes were looking every direction, just like a damn squirrel-eyed little predator. I mean, I was just squirreling around and sniffing ass in every direction. So I deserved it. But I was brokenhearted, man. And I remember laying in I had a step family that I spent time with, that I lived with for many years. I remember laying in their backyard and smoking menthol cigarettes and reading the Bible. That's what I did. That's what I did, dude. And trying to learn French because she spoke French, and I wanted to learn it to try to win her back. That's what I did, dude. Like a damn fucking little weakling, bro. Just like a broken-hearted little weirdo, dude. And I didn't even take responsibility for my own actions. I was a dirtbag boyfriend. But I just felt, I don't know, I felt brokenhearted by her. Or just by the experience, man. Dude, I even remember, bro, this is the gayest shit I'll ever say, man. And not gay in a two men or women loving each other. Just gay outside of that. I ended up making like all kinds of crafts and shit, dude. I was fucking doing weird shit. So, yeah, I was brokenhearted, man, right there. The last time I was brokenhearted, I was seeing a girl, and neither one of us were good for each other. We were in some ways, but I wasn't a good boyfriend, you know. I was just a scoundrel. I was out and about and just, you know, being perverse and, you know, dabbling around in different crotches here and there, and she broke up with me. And I got in my car the day she broke up with me. I was living out here in Los Angeles, and I drove all the way across country to try and win her back. Yeah. And it didn't end up working out very well. What else, man? I'll tell you this other adventure. Actually, one time, the one girl I was brokenhearted from, the middle one I told you about, I ended up hitchhiking. And I ended up hitchhiking out to South Carolina to try and track her down, dude, and get her to fall back for me. And I stood up there in the middle of the night. I didn't know anybody in South Carolina. And I remember standing out on her porch where she lived. I just knew her address because we'd been communicating through mail. You know, mail was, it was before email. It was when you had to basically take an email and hand it to a man you didn't know and hope that he delivered it to that person 4 days later. And I remember there I was standing on her porch in the middle of the night in a town I'd never been in a state I'd never been in. And they had a cat there. Somebody had a cat. Maybe her roommate or a neighbor or something. And this cat kind of befriended me, and I'm standing there petting this cat on this ex-girlfriend's porch. and realizing what the fuck are you doing, dude? Like, you almost are a serial killer right now. You are standing. This lady doesn't even know you're in town, and here you are petting her cat. Or somebody's fucking cat. I don't even know whose fucking cat this is, dude. Imagine if she would have opened the door and been like, A, what the fuck are you doing here? And B, whose fucking cat is that? Whose cat is that, dude? I don't even like cats. I don't even trust cats. So that was just baffling. I mean, yeah, I've been brokenhearted. I don't handle it well. Because you know why? I'll tell you this. I don't even remember the name, whoever requested this. Zach, I think. Maybe Jim. But I pin my well-being and I pin my feelings on them. So if they aren't accepting me, then I don't feel good about myself. And that's the problem. Because I should feel good about myself no matter what. As long as I am being an upstanding human, and as long as I'm being respectful. And that's where I'm trying to get to now. That's why I don't want to get into another relationship until I know that I can do those things. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I'm going to leave it right there. This is getting a little bit long. Let me see if we have one more in here. We got a couple of good ones. Some fellas, his ball skin shed off of his body when he was younger. Basically just shed off, and I think we'll get to that next time. And a buddy had a question, another question about breakfast foods. What do you prefer for breakfast if you have breakfast foods from me? And I'll get to those next week, man. I'll get to those next week. That's what I'm going to do. So that's it, man. That's really where we are. I appreciate you guys being here with me. I don't know if this is a good episode or not, dude. I don't even know what the fuck I'm doing a lot of times. And I'm sorry for the language, but whatever, dude. It's just how I'm feeling right now. You know? And I know it's only February. Oh, yeah, happy Black History Month to everybody. I know it's only February, but I'm going to play this song on the way out. Just because. Dare yourselves.